guys, welcome to Brian's Man Cave. So, a little while ago, I did a video about my top 10 games for the Intellivision. It was a fun video. I liked to go through a lot of the titles and pick out which I always thought were some of my favorites or my go-to games of all time. So I thought I would do the same thing now with the Atari 2600. Being as that is the system that I probably play the most outside of the Intellivision, and maybe I can also do one for Coleco, because I do like the ColecoVision. But anyways, let's get to this list, and I'll talk about my games that I think are the top 10 for my list. Anyways, let's start off. I always include this game a lot. This is Keystone Capers. You're probably going to see a bunch of Activision titles in this list, because Activision made a lot of great games for the Atari 2600. And this was no exception. And if you've seen my videos before, and you've seen me talk about this game, it was a game that kind of inspired me to want to get the Atari 2600. Back in the day when I only had, I had my Intellivision, I had a Commodore 64, and then at some point, I ended up getting my Nintendo, but I always wanted an Atari, and I just never picked one up. And then I saw this game on the shelf, and it was when the Atari Junior was released. That's that smaller Atari. And I thought, that looks like a cool game, and that's what inspired me to want to actually pick up an Atari back in that time. Anyways, I picked up this game. It's a platform-style game. You are Keystone Kelly, you're running through a department store, you're trying to catch a crook. It's multi-levels. Well, it's the same screens, but, you advance every time, and it gets harder and harder. There's things coming after you, there's airplanes, there's shopping carts, there's rubber balls bouncing around. It's a very fun game. There's a lot of challenge, a lot of obstacles. In fact, I've actually made a version of this game for the Intellivision, which is actually going to be released very soon. Or it's released now, but, it's going to be showcased soon. Anyways, yeah, so Keystone Capers. I'm not sure if these are going to be in a specific order. If you want to call this number 1 or number 10, go ahead. So let's get to the next one. So, we got Midnight Magic. This was another game that I picked up the same time when I picked up my first Atari and I got the Keystone Capers game. This was the other game I picked out. I always liked pinball. I always liked playing pinball. I prefer playing the video game pinballs over the real machine pinballs. Sometimes, pinball machines are fun, but video games give you those little extra things that you can do. And then with this one, you get different challenges. The screen will change colors. It does, a bunch of different things. It's got great sounds, really good effects, and the physics in the game are really fun. So I think, there is a video pinball for the Atari 2600. I'm not too crazy about it. I don't like the way it plays, and it's a very wide screen. This one has a nice narrow screen, and it's got little things you could do in the game. But that's Midnight Magic. So the next one I have on my list here is Miss Pac-Man. Now, obviously, Pac-Man was a bust for the Atari 2600 when it came out. People were kind of disappointed. I'd never really had a problem with it when I was a kid. I remember playing it. I did borrow an Atari from a friend for a while, so I had all their games. And Pac-Man was one of them, and I played it. I didn't have any problems with it. But I'm sure a lot of people were waiting for, when Pac-Man came out, they were waiting for something that resembled a little bit more of the arcade. Which, kind of unfair at the time to really expect that kind of quality on an Atari 2600. But nonetheless, we got a really, dismal version of Pac-Man. So they corrected that with Miss Pac-Man, which came out later on. I don't know when this was, 87, I think it says here on the thing. So probably around that time was when it was released. But, Miss Pac-Man fixed all those issues. Nice color board. You could see the ghosts. There's multiple boards. It's a fun game. If you're really into the dot gobbling games, Miss Pac-Man's going to do it for you. Of course, there's the homebrews that came out later on, Pac-Man 4K and all that stuff. But I'm talking about original titles here. So the next one on the list is a game that I always feel gets an unfair kind of rep to it. And that is E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. Of course, it's based off the movie, E.T. This game is notorious for being quoted as the worst game of all time, which I always disagree with. I remember playing this game back when I was a little kid. My friend of the family, they actually had it, and I was playing it at their house, and I loved it. I thought this was a cool game. You're running around as E.T., you're being chased, you're picking up these things, you're searching the ditches. I always thought it was cool. I really wished it was on the Intellivision at the time, but it wasn't. There was no E.T. for the Intellivision, and I didn't have an Atari, so I always wanted to play this game every time I went over to their house, because I just thought it was a lot of fun. Sure, I didn't know what the heck I was doing at the time, and that's the problem with this game, is that a lot of people don't read the instruction manual. You want to play this game, read the instruction manual. You read that, and you'll know what you're doing. Sure, it's tedious when you fall in the holes all the time, and you try and get out, and then you fall back in. Sure, you can call that a programming glitch if you want, but once you get used to it, you get the feel for it. A lot of people agree that E.T. is actually an exciting game, and for what it did at its time, based on all the other games that were out, this kind of pushed the boundaries and gave you this whole little world that you can run around on. It wasn't a single screen. You know, Howard Scott Warshaw could have taken the easy route and just made a Pac-Man clone, made E.T. the Pac-Man, and you're eating Reese's Pieces. He could have done that, but he didn't. He wanted to push the envelope and make a game that was exciting, like an adventure game. So, I always recommend E.T. Just read the manual. Now for the next game, Frogger. Frogger is a game that I love on any system I can play it on. I play it on the Intellivision, I play it on the ColecoVision, I played it on the little handhelds. No matter where you play Frogger, it is fun. And it doesn't have to be, you know, that graphically pleasing to even be an enjoyable game. But the Atari did a pretty good job. Like, I really like the graphics in it. The frog looks nice, all of the sprites look nice. Everything looks good about this game. It really works. And it's a game you can just throw in and just play, really quickly. In fact, a lot of these games I'm showing you today are the ones where you can really just put them in and just play for like a few minutes, have some fun, and then move on to another game. And Frogger's like that. You play for a little while, you have some fun, and then you move on. So going on to the next one, kind of like a dot gobbler game again, Crystal Castles. I remember playing this game before I even had it on the Atari, actually. I remember playing it at a local, like a convenience store, and they had an arcade there. They had one arcade there, and it was Crystal Castles. Had the roller ball and everything. Me and my friend were always playing on it. I loved it. It was, that kind of isometric look, it's on an isometric, I believe. And then it's like you're running around, you're collecting the gems. There's little creepy guys coming after you. Your Bentley Bear. Is it Bentley Bear or Bentley the Bear? I don't know. It's Bentley. So you're running around, you're trying to collect these gems. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. So when I found out it was on the Atari 2600, I had to have it. And I wasn't disappointed. I mean, the graphics are neat. The play style's fun. Sure, it's a little tricky going up those side angles, because you're using a joystick, like a 4-direction joystick. So going in the angles is a little bit tricky, but once you get used to it. Also, you're not perfectly on the path all the time, so sometimes you might run beside the crystals, so you might not pick them up when you think you are going to pick them up. Other than that, I mean, it's got multiple screens. There's a lot going on. It's a real cool game. I really enjoyed this one. So, the next one, Hero. I couldn't make this list without adding Hero. One of the better platformer games on the system, in my opinion. Now, I do like Pitfall and Pitfall 2. I didn't want to include those in here. I played them, but I think Hero deserves the notch on this one, because you got so much depth to it. Literally, you're going down caverns. It ramps up each level. It gets harder and harder and harder. There's pattern recognition. There's there's 15 or maybe more levels, and I don't think I've ever gotten to the last level. I always get pretty far, and then it's game over. But it does give you the option to restart at later levels. So it's a fun game. There's a lot going on. My first experience with this was actually on the Commodore 64, and I played it a lot when I was a kid. I didn't even know it started on the Atari 2600. That was a shock to me, because I thought, there's no way this type of game could be on something like the Atari, but it actually started on the Atari, so pretty cool and pretty impressive game. Next one on my list, Jungle Hunt. Now this one, it was I remember actually getting this as a birthday present from my friend after I got my Atari. He gave me this and another game, and I was surprised when I played it. I'm like, this game is cool. It's a lot of fun, and it's got colorful graphics. The sprites are great. It's got a great challenge to it. It's got the 3 different levels that are completely different. So you got the vines where you got to swing on the vines. Then you get the water. You have to like dodge the crocodiles and make sure you don't drown. And then I think there's jellyfish too that come up. And then you get to the part where you have to run up the hill, jump over the boulders that are coming down. And then you get to the part where you got to save your girlfriend from those little guys that are dancing by the pot. So it's a real cool game, and I think that I think in the arcade it was called Jungle King, if I'm not mistaken. I never played this in the arcade. It was again another game that I had that when I started playing it, I thought it was really excellent. A lot of stuff going on here. I always like it when you get these multi-screens going on, and it's a short game. It's not something that takes a lot of your time. The other game that my friend got me was Joust. And this one I did play on the Commodore 64, and I always enjoyed playing it. I just think that the Atari 2600 did a pretty decent job. I mean, the physics are correct. Sure, the board is a little bit plain. It's that typical Atari board where you got the little thin lines as your ground. But ultimately, the gameplay is fun, and this is a game that I would constantly go back to and keep playing and playing. You kind of never get bored of it. It's a great game. There's lots going on. You got the different kinds of characters coming at you. There's a level where there's just eggs, and you have to try and collect the eggs before they hatch. It's fun. There's a lot going on, and it's really well done for what the system is. And the final game, which of course is another Activision game, and that's River Raid. Much like I said with Hero, this was a game that I grew up playing on my Commodore 64. I loved playing this game. I played it so many times. I even had one of those joysticks where it had the little suction cups on the bottom, so I could stick it to the counter or to the table I was playing on, and just to help me guide the plane. I didn't have to hold the joystick. I enjoyed playing River Raid. Again, it's another title I didn't know started on the Atari 2600 because I only had it on the 64. Of course, the graphics were a little bit different. Not too much. The gameplay is pretty much the same. You're going through the water. You gotta fuel up, you gotta shoot things, you gotta get to the bridge, get to the next bridge, and it's multiple levels, and it just keeps going and going, and the difficulty increases each level. Lots going on in this game, and it's tricky. I mean, once you get pretty far up there, it gets hard, and there's things coming after you, there's things shooting at you. It just becomes a challenge. I think River Raid was one of those really well done games. Definitely, is still playable today. One of the more better games you could pop into your Atari 2600. Anyways, that's my list of my top Atari 2600. This was tough. I mean, there's a lot of games I wanted to include, like Mousetrap and Venture, and there's a lot of games behind me I could have chosen. But I thought I would do my top list. Maybe I could come up with a different kind of list later on, because there is so many styles of games. Anyways, hope you liked the video. Let me know what you think. Throw some comments down below. Let me know what you like, what your favorite games are, what you keep going back to. Always like to hear what you have to say. Hope you subscribe, and I'll talk to you later.